What's going on, Secondhand Talent family? It's your boy Steiner here, as always, with my co-host Ducky. Ducky, what do I want to say to the people?
What's going on, everybody?
Thank you, Ducky.
Cheers.
We have Arin from Ween Archived here with us, who has been
Hello.
providing all of those wonderful Ween B-sides and unreleased and unmastered tracks for us to respond to over the summer. Truly a pleasure to have you here on the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting me on.
Sorry. Wow. Yeah.
Hello, I have returned.
Wait, what?
I have returned.
Yeah. But yeah, as soon as they played If You Love Me, I was like, I would not know this song if it wasn't for Arin. So again, like, thank you. Like it's been really the feedback from the Ween community in general has been wonderful.
Yeah.
I mean, just like friends of mine who are just as big Ween fans as I am, saying to me like, "Oh shit, I've never heard Edman, or I've never heard Mocha, or Big Dick Black, or
Yeah, that's a fun one. Yeah.
I'm trying to remember what track. Linda the Sexy Dancer.
Yeah.
That key solo at the end.
Yeah.
It's like mollusk-esque.
That one was very fun to remaster. I think I got a really good thing out of it because the frequencies were there. And I used the thing to try to make it lossless because I can kind of do that if it has a certain frequency point that's possible. And I was able to do it there.
Shit.
Yeah, I was able to kind of get that there with the MP3s, which is why I think it sounds so much better.
And that was really the first one that I had heard, because I was going through trying to decide like which ones I wanted to put out there first.
Yeah.
And I remember I listened to the first few seconds and I was like, there's parts of this song I've never heard before that I'm hearing right now. And I need to that's why it was one of the first, is because I was just like, this needs to get put up. And there's just so many more that we didn't get to. And then during the season, one of the things that I'd like to do with this guy is do some because he's really never heard them. So for the tracks that you're refining that I do know,
a lot of the ones
I want him to hear
the
those.
original version. Like when I find myself listening to stuff that I listen to a lot, I'm like, dude, you got to put something new on because you hear this all the time, and there's not enough time to listen to all the new stuff. So you're making up for lost time at this point.
And it's a blessing to hear music from one of our favorite bands that, like I said, have either never heard it before, have never heard it in that quality or clarity before, with that kind of mastering,
or just like drug bands and jam bands. If you want to break it down like that, you
or just
can.
Good bands that can jam.
Well, yeah, but I'm talking about when you look at their fan base, you can kind of break down who's good, because a lot of Ween fans are super into the Dead and other jam bands. I've noticed, at least there's a big crossover.
I think it's a pretty healthy. I'm curious actually to hear your opinion on that.
Maybe so maybe a better way to say it would be a lot of the people that I see at jam shows are also Ween fans. Not necessarily. If you go to a Ween show, they're all going to be jam fans. But if you go to a jam show, a lot of them are going to be Ween fans.
Yeah, I'm going to blame Roses Are Free for that.
Yes. And Fish's cover of it. Yeah, definitely.
But Arin, I'm super curious to hear your thoughts on that with regards to
pinned it down exactly
what that crossover is like, because one of the things that you mentioned at the beginning of this interview is not really having that exposure to music, in the sense of Ween is just another band that you discovered. Curious to hear your perspective on that, and how your relationship with Ween either has or has not metastasized to include other bands or other music.
Well, that actually reminded me of a quote from Gene himself, where he's saying that he is not a fan of Fish at all. He talks about in this old interview, he's like, out of all the things we've done, this is what gets us notoriety. It's like how Beavis and Butthead got us notoriety. It's like we try so hard different ways, and then they're like, we're glad we got popular with these people. We're glad they like us, but it's just we don't apparently they tried to open for some jam band at some point, and like at a festival, and there's a whole thing about Dean just he couldn't do it anymore. He was like sitting for 3 hours listening to, in his words, white boys noodling on their guitars, and he couldn't take it anymore. So they
Those were like the horde festivals in the early
Yeah.
90s, right? Like with
Yeah.
Blues Traveler and Spin Doctors and Fish and like
Yeah, that makes a
all
lot of
those
sense.
bands, and you're just like don't do Princeton before you, and you're just like, okay, well, this was not a great payoff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
He's just
Gene,
listening to yacht rock like this is torture.
there's a whole
This
thing about
fucking
with
sucks, dude.
Gene. He
Like
says he was at a family gathering and that one of his nephews was there and he played the Fish version of Roses Are Free and he had to hold back so hard not to beat him up. He couldn't take it. He was like just completely so angry.
yeah.
As soon as they finished playing "Oh My Dear," Diener was just like, all right, back to the hate. Enough of, enough of this fucking love shit. Like I get that, and I
Yeah.
feel that. That's kind of got to be like a weird feeling to,
But yeah, I mean,
especially after Push the Little Daisies and the success that had in Australia and New Zealand and that part of the world, to then come back with Roses and just like, Fish is playing it and then Loop de Loop.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
They do
it
like
must feel weird for
SpongeBob.
like a good portion of your fan base to come from Fish, Beavis and Butthead, and like
SpongeBob.
and SpongeBob and South Park. Like, yeah, you know what I
Very
mean?
much.
They're like, I mean, they like our music, but they like our music because they heard it in a show. Like it's just it's all through different avenues, it seems like.
Just
Yeah, I don't have that kind of view of it because as I said, I just heard it through a random song.
Yeah, right.
So it was very much
Discovered it the way they wish everyone did, it seems like.
I guess, yeah. So I don't really have the view of what it's like to come from another band there because I also didn't have any musical biases beforehand.
Yes, that's true too. You mentioned that probably helped a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
so I appreciated them from a lot of different angles as I slowly got more and more into it.
And as you've been continuing into this production and mastering and audio journey of yours, I mean, it's clear to me as a casual observer that appreciation has grown.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious to hear, and I know Ducky had a question as well that he wanted to follow up with, but very curious to hear, as this drive for your technique has grown and as you have clearly really stuck with exploring Ween and like including DWG and including Moist Boys and including, I saw you put up the Tree Fellows album, which I thought was pretty cool, the Synthetic Socks stuff, all the really like the more Ween adjacent stuff that I'm a little more familiar with. I'm glad that you're expanding out to there. Do you see yourself kind of staying in that main vein?
Pretty much. I mean, that's what I've mostly done. And there's a lot Ween adjacent stuff. And that Tree Fellows, do you know how that's adjacent to Ween?
Please tell the story because I do, but our audience does not. I know that.
And I do not.
It was with a guy named Marcel Chateau. I'm pretty sure Chateau. And he owned the record, like a big record shop in New Hope, around that area. It wasn't in New Hope exactly, but very close by. And Ween would hang out there a ton. And he started a band with Scott Lowe. And Scott Lowe went to Ween's school, and Scott is on a ton of songs. He whistles on Don't Get Too Close to My Fantasy, backing vocals on HIV song The Rift. He does the main vocals on the Rift demo, interestingly enough. He does, there's a lot of early stuff. There's a song called Sympathy for Scott, and it's like a Sympathy for the Devil cover with Scott Lowe on vocals, or it's about Scott. There's the She Said cover on Bulbous Boognish that has his drum machine and he's on the vocals. And that drum machine, the only other time they borrowed Scott's drum machine was for Don't Get Too Close, which is why he was even there. So they used the same drum machine, those two songs.
Which fuck out of here. That's just like the most coolest like RAM knowledge that like it's so I like this is stuff that I've nenever heard before. And again,
I have
as
so
someone
much
who's
that isn't even public knowledge. There's so many stories to tell with so little time.
so quick question.
Well, there's always part twos.
You're
Yeah.
familiar with Schnitzel Records.
Yes.
Oliver's a wonderful human being, and he and I were in contact when I was living overseas a lot. And one of the things he and I talked about a lot was just the lament that there was never a Shinola Volume 2.
Yeah.
And before I hand it over to Ducky, I'm curious to hear your perspective on why. Like, why hasn't Caesar been, or not even Caesar as a whole, but let's say, like, we look at the canon of unreleased music, right? It's not like we're dealing with the Zappa family trust here, and there's all this infighting about what gets released and when, like, the band, like, thankfully the band is here, and there hasn't really been a record since Shinola, and I like the tradition of the Grateful Dead here, and like, let the words be yours, I'm done with mine, and them being so cool with you taking these liberties and this music. But is another album something you'd like to see?
Absolutely. Though I think it fully depends on the band themselves, because I've heard many points of views. There was an interview from Claude not too long ago where he's like, I do think they may record again, but it's fully dependent on if they can heal these bonds perfectly, because they're like brothers. They're never going to be completely apart. They're always going to come together in some way. They just need to heal these wounds they have. And it's a bit strange. I will agree that with Dean, he hasn't recorded anything in a very long time, at least compared to most of how he was recording stuff. No Dean Ween group after 2018, and no even signs of that. He's dropped off the internet, basically. Very hard to find or contact. Arin always wasn't too easy to find, but especially now. And he hasn't recorded anything, at least released, since Freeman. So both of them have gone away with the music, and you'd think, is that possible? I think they definitely are recording stuff on their own, whether it's together, I have no idea. But I do think they are, I guess, experimenting with recording.
Ooh.
And whether
what about sorry, I was just gonna say, like, on the note of Shinola Volume 2, though, like, or that type of thing, like, what about the B-sides? Because you have those the Sky Cruiser single with Bakersfield and Eye to the Sky, and you have Pollo Asado, and you have Buenos Tardes. You have all these tracks that have been produced, that were legitimately recorded. And I mean, is it a question of wanting to re-record them to the way they are now? They don't want to just release a collection of tracks.
I think as far as releasing old archival material, it's more a question of they've said in many interviews, we want to release it when we're old and we need the money. And that's one thing they've been saying since like 92, which is funny to me. That's always been in the books, which I think is really funny. But for me, it's just like, I don't think they think about it too often, because people have asked Ween, why don't you play a certain song live? Somebody asked him about Caesar. He had no idea what they were talking about till they named a few songs. And he's like, oh, yeah, that. I never think about it. That's why we don't play Ambrosia Parsley live. And he says there's 400 songs for Quebec. Only 20 are online. Nobody thinks about these random songs that we recorded ages ago. And when we do, anything, it's kind of what we're working with now. So I think the only case where these songs can kind of get out are, I guess, once they work towards that archival thing, because I've also heard that they need to they have all these old tapes, all super damaged. They need to restore them and get them high quality, digitally. And that would take maybe years, because I've read things about Mickey wanting to, and he could barely get through the box, and it took him weeks to get through like a single bag. And there's tons of all these like 2-track masters with all the stems on them. and
Well,
it's
I mean,
just such a pain to get through that.
Yeah.
I was kind of thinking more along the lines of, like the Sky Cruiser Eye to the Sky Sub Pop
I don't think they think
you
about
know,
it.
tracks that have been mastered for vinyl already, that just never made it to an album. I think you're doing a service by bringing this stuff out, and I mean, and then I'm gonna want to hand it over to
That
Ducky
kinda
after
leads me
this,
into it,
but
yeah.
go for it.
No. I mean,
Well,
I'm sure
I
it
was
still will.
I was just so curious. Have has the band acknowledged the remaster work that you've been doing and bringing this stuff to a new light?
Well, the reason I even met Ween's manager to begin with is because have you seen the upload of Let's Get Divorced? That's
Just got married, so I chose to do Be My Wife, but I have seen the upload of Let's Get to
that's La Cucaracha, and that was the first time it was online. It was live before, but nobody had the demo, so I found it and I uploaded it. And apparently Gene saw it. And when Gene saw it, he listened to it and he's like, this sounds better than the copy I have, and told his manager to reach out to me, which is why I even got contact with the band originally.
Fuck yeah.
Wow.
So that, I guess, was kind of the in where Gene saw it while he's scrolling around and it took him aback. So he wanted me to get in the in. And it's worked because I've actually gotten guest lists to a few shows through this kind of thing. So it's always fun. I went to the Halloween 22 one. That was one that I got into, and it was really fun.
Damn. Well, when you're in the Midwest, you're definitely coming to a show with us.
I'm always
I'm
very East Coast right now, but I like going around more, especially with guest lists.
Well, Chicago's a fun place to be.
Yeah. I've been to Chicago before when I was younger.
Well, it's time to come when you're older.
Yeah, yeah. That does kind of lead me into a question, or like kind of a two-parter. So is this like your only profession? What else, like, is this what you do all the time?
When I'm at home and at my computer mostly, though I do have a lot of other interests that I do. I like sailing.
Is it how you make money though? Like, do you have other jobs, or is this like?
I actually photography at a hair salon that I work with. I actually got my hair done there today.
Nice.
Very cool.
I worked with them for a year as an intern, and I do photography now with them for their social medias and stuff. And when I'm home after I do all that, I do my audio work, and yeah, that's a lot of what I do.
And what were the other interests that you were talking about?
Sailing, because that goes with marine biology, of course. I love the ocean. I love to make art, graphic design. A lot of the album art I use on my channel, I make myself. So the Caprice cover I made, there was this one for the Argus too. I did like a remixed version. That's also my art. And it has like all
Kevin
these
the Honky art, yours as well?
Yeah.
Yes.
I love
I
love that song.
Well, we'll connect about making some art at some point. That would be super fun.
I love art.
But also, like, do you specifically, I'm gonna kind of, I guess, break this down the easiest way. Do you only remix and remaster old Ween, or do you remix and remaster all old music, or do you mix and master stuff for people that is like going to be released? Like, do you do like just like studio audio work for people?
Not much yet. What I have done for other bands, and a few of these include so this goes into another thing I wanted to discuss with what Ween has opened as far as doors go for my career. I've discovered a lot of Ween adjacent bands that aren't online. And one of those was so their really early record they had some tapes that were released by like maybe 500, 700 at most. Not many exist nowadays, and they go for thousands on eBay. The Crucial Squeegee Lip is one of them.
The only Ween record I'm missing.
And these cassettes, they were on a local record label from New Hope called Bird o' Prey
Bird o' Prey.
Records. Yeah, it was in Jersey. And you cannot find much about this label at all online because it was very small, but I can tell you a bit about it because I've done so much research. I have a digital copy of pretty much every tape that label released.
Oh, sick.
And there are so many great bands that are completely undocumented online with albums. There's one called Funkophobia Blade in the Lawn. It's like this new wave rock thing. And then there's
dope.
Well, I mean,
Cleft Palate,
would
Big
throw-
Fat Gash. And it's like
I would
this.
throw Solid Bronze up there. I mean, Project Pollen, if we're going all the way back
Yeah.
when, Amandala,
Mandala, yeah.
you know, what was Instant Death?
Yeah.
You know, there are so many Ween adjacent groups. And we were talking about this the other day, actually, about Project Pollen and Amandala and a few of those other Synthetic Socks, one that we mentioned before.
Yeah, and I'd argue that these are even rarer because you can't find them online. There's no info you can basically track down. And one thing about these that's super cool is they all relate to Ween other than just being on the same label. The label was owned by Andrew Weiss and a buddy named Jeff Rusnak, and the tapes all have different people related to Ween. So there's one called Spiny Norman Bates, and then there's another called Cleft Palate. And
Jimmy Wasserman.
There was a band called Wasserman Love Puddle.
So the names are also Ween adjacent. This is great. These names are fantastic. Did you say Spiny Norman Bates?
Yeah, and the guy doing guitar on that, his name
That's
is
the best name I've heard.
it has such a good cover too. It's like this pink thick. I'll send it to you on Facebook after. It's like spiky hair.
I'm
making this crazy.
Is there a
face.
way I can hear it? I want to hear Spiny Norman.
Yeah,
Bates.
I'll play you some of. I'll send some to you. It's
I think
pretty
that's my
cool.
new
It's
favorite
like,
band.
It has
I really
Steiner's
think so.
original guitar teacher on it. He was the guitarist, and there was another guy on it. I forget his name, but he was really close bands. He was at one of their first concerts, and everyone knew each other. So all these guys, the guy who drew the cover art for Crucial Squeegee Lip was in it, and then the guy who made the Axis cover, that was Billy Tucker, which was Mickey's original guitar teacher.
For those
So there's
who don't
all these
know,
connections.
Axis 2, Bold as Boognish.
Yeah. So many connections with all these weird local bands with crazy covers.
So like Hendrix spinoffs?
No.
It's just they just
kind of took it.
I was like finding a way to say it, and then you said took it, and I'm like, we can go with that.
They like to do that a lot. It's funny.
That's so cool though. That honestly, that's only we like. I feel like if any other band did that, I'd be like, "I'd fucking stop it." You know,
they were
but
they
like
were 16
I'm like, nah,
when they made that.
That follows. Yeah, that's
16. So it's just a couple of kids, and they're like, "I like this album. Now it's ours. We'll make that our title."
The only old Ween thing I've seen is this video of like them when they're in like high school, and one of them's got like just a white t-shirt with the boog drawn out in like Sharpie, and they're playing like on like the bleachers, just like noodling around, like they've just recorded their. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
I was gonna say you're looking at me like you haven't seen it. You need to have seen this. I'm surprised you haven't.
I'm looking at you like I'm proud of you.
Yeah, dude. Well, I saw that like a while ago, and I was like, this is really cool. But then again, I like didn't dive further for some reason.
You want an exclusive tidbit about some of these old videos? There's one that I have, and I can't post it, but there's a song really old. It's called Big Baboons, which is a funny name on its own. And this song, it's really early, about 88, 87, and it's just a kind of acoustic thing with a weird solo. Old. And there's a music video for it that isn't online. It was recorded by Arin on his old Betamax tape thing. And it's like he's just kind of like at school, his buddy's recording it. He looks super high, and he's like kind of moving around like this, not looking or singing with anything, like going, and then
like
it cuts.
Tom York.
It cuts to him in a dark room, and you can see light behind him, but nothing of him except the silhouette. And he's like doing this, making crazy faces. And it's so dark you can't see them. And if you brighten up the video, you can see just these super, just crazy faces over and over. And then it randomly ends and cuts back to the thing of him like sitting and doing that. And that's the whole music video. And I have no idea why he made it. And it's just one of these really weird, like early them messing around music videos. It's crazy. It's almost creepy, but cool at the same time. Just that.
I want to see that.
Yeah, it's so.
Our producer's losing her mind right now.
It sounds like if the pod was a video.
Oh, like, there's so many of these. Was one of Genie's playing the father and son cover by Cat Stevens. Playing on a guitar.
That's cool.
He's doing it in this voice. Take it slowly is how he's singing it. And he's wearing a mask, and it almost looks like a Boogie Boy from Devo, but like almost kind of deformed, and the mouth moves really weird. And he's playing it. It's from '88 as well, and he's playing it on like a couch, and Dean's recording him. And then he just ends by screaming a ton, and then Dean's like, how do you turn this thing off? And then it ends abruptly. It almost seems staged, that ending. It's so funny.
It's almost...
Wait, you said 88?
Yeah, so they're like 17,
dude, yeah.
18.
Imagine the frustration of being compared to Fish, or like getting fan base from Fish when you started at the same fucking time as Fish. It's not like they started
They started in 84.
Well,
83,
yeah, but
84,
like,
yeah.
They didn't gain much of a fan base until
I
like it's not 10 years later, it's like 5 years later. You know what I mean?
I'll say this, and this kind of gets back to the roses are free comment that we were talking about earlier. I think they were,
which Fish does have a great cover.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but that, or to say lightning in a bottle that they captured in 91, 92 with Push the Little Daisies. I feel like for them, and I obviously don't know this personally, but it seems to me, being a fan of the band for as long as I have, that organic catching on in such a different part of the world, after experiencing that, I could see how the Roses, pile on was a bit of a letdown for them, because they had tasted that organic growth. They were on the Jane Pratt show, doing Freedom of 76, which is insane that they were doing that on daytime TV, but
which is not abnormal for a band anyway. Just like their favorite stuff, the crowds, like the fan base's favorite stuff is like usually they're like, damn, that's like our throwaway shit.
But they did it with just the two of them and a 4-track. And that, like, I feel like for them to get that to that level with that bassness.
Right. Like we hear about Bohemian Rhapsody in the 8-track, but we don't hear about them doing all that with a 4-track. You know what I mean? It's the same mastery of the current technology that you have. It's the exact same thing.
Most of it. Lots of tape effects, weird.
Yeah, exactly.
Bending the tape in a weird way.
But one had an overbite.
All right. We got to hop out and back in one more time. The conversation is just going way too well.
Yeah, we got to do one more.
Real quick.
All right.